Started.
I've just hit start, sorry. I thought it started.
No, I thought Alex put his hand up just then. So, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for your attendance. Do I have any apologies or any substitutions? Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Nyhook. Councillor Sandra Barnes should be here substituting, but isn't here at the moment.
I will say the traffic through Arnold took forever.
Okay,
it was really bad.
That might also be why Councillor Gibbons hasn't arrived yet either.
The roadworks at the main traffic lights are really bad. And here's Des. So, thank you. Councillor Martins.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Councillor Sam Smith is unfortunately tied up at work and won't be able to make it. Thank you.
Hopefully, Councillor Barnes will join us before we're too far into the meeting. Are there any declarations of interest? No. Thank you. In that I hope everybody has had a chance to read the report. And of course, it's not come up on my machine because I was in a meeting earlier. I believe it's going to be presented by Mr. Neelan. Have you got anything that you want to say other than general reports about it?
No, unless there's any specific questions which anybody's got.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just wondering, why something like this hasn't came in before, or has it always been there?
It's been there. It's a power which the local authority can adopt. I think moving forward, the importance of maintaining good air quality across the borough has risen up the ranks of priorities for both councillors and politicians. It's a measure which has been introduced in part because we've received a number of complaints from members of the public about engines which have been idling, particularly around schools where young children are. So people will keep engines running during the winter to keep the cars warm and during the summer to keep the cars cool with the air conditioning on. And it's felt that it's adding to air pollution around areas where there are particularly sensitive young lungs. So it's a measure which we've introduced in part of a raft of measures to deal with improved air quality.
Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. I can see this as a positive move, especially around schools and so on. I just want to query whether we've got plans to enforce it, though, because, you know, it's well and good to actually have the powers, but if we don't intend to enforce it and we have to enforce it on the spot to get the evidence, then there's little point in having it.
We do intend to enforce it. We have got an enforcement protocol and all enforcement has to be done in a reasonable and measured way. So we have a team of environmental technicians, neighbourhood wardens, licensing officers, environmental health officers, and each one of them is going to be given delegation through the council scheme of delegations. But I think we'll be taking quite a pragmatic and a practical approach to how we implement it. So I don't envisage that this is going to be, that we're going to be giving these fixed penalties out like confetti. It's going to be done on a case-by-case basis. And I kind of get the impression that we are looking to do quite a bit of publicity to promote it. So there's going to be quite a bit of upfront work It's a bit like fixed penalty notices. So we issue a relatively small number of fixed penalty notices relating to litter and fly tipping and dog fouling, but we do have quite a lot of publicity behind it. So it's about changing behaviour, it's about educating people, it's about working with some of the schools, perhaps some of the parent groups. It's just bringing it up the agenda. But I suppose the questions are going to be, well, what are you going to do if we don't switch the engine off? Well, we might just issue the fixed penalty notice. So it's that kind of approach more than anything else. And I think the way that the government have worded the legislation is they're expected us to take a sensible approach to it.
Councillor Martin Smith.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, in the report you talk about issuing a fixed penalty notice and to quote, if they fail to comply with the requirement to stop the running of the engine of that vehicle. Will that be a verbal request or will that be a plate on a lamp post?
It's likely to be a verbal request, to be fair, and I think it would only be in the worst case scenario. So if somebody is running their engine unreasonably outside a school gate, and it's a you can imagine a big dirty diesel engine spewing lots of particles out there, we probably would want to have a conversation with them. We'd ask them to do it. We're going to be giving out a leaflet which is, as I say, looking to change behaviour and possibly engage with them. But if all else fails, then we can issue that fixed penalty notice. It's not a massive amount of money. It's only £20. It's more of a token gesture, I think. I think it's risen up from £10, to be fair, because it was even smaller beforehand. So I think it's the government saying, you know, I'm expecting you to have a conversation. I'm expecting that conversation to be around air quality. It's going to be a tricky conversation. I would prefer you to educate people, but if that fails, this is possibly a small poke that you can give people to try and get them to do it.
Yeah, I think that's a proportionate response.
Yeah.
I think just issuing a fixed penalty notice without that conversation, because most members of the public won't be aware that this legislation is in place.
And I think you're quite right to use the word proportionate, and I think that is the way that the government is encouraging us to do it. And I think, you know, colleagues in our legal department have always encouraged officers who are doing frontline enforcement to be proportionate, and this is another example of where we'll be looking to do it.
Councillor Ellis, you want to come back again?
Yes, thank you. I do agree it's publicity that's going to make this work. And I suspect your most effective enforcement officers are going to be children.
Well, let's hope so.
Councillor Scroggy?
Yeah, just an idea. Maybe it might be beneficial to have Gedling's Youth Council involved. You mentioned about the publicity and that. Obviously, the Youth Council, you know, they're at schools, so they could be ideal.
Is everybody happy that we move to the recommendation? Which I've got to put my glasses on to read. So we approve the draft bylaws, authorise the head of environmental services with me to assess any responses from the consultation. Thank you. Slightly bigger version. Delegated authority be given to the corporate director to authorise relevant officers or persons to stop the commission of stationary idling offences and issue fixed penalty notices in respect of such offences in accordance with Regulation 6.3 of the Road Traffic Act, Vehicle Emissions Fixed Penalty, England Regulations 2002. So I'll ask for a proposer. Thank you very much, Councillor Wilkinson. Did you see seconders? There were quite a few people put their hand up, okay. All those in favour of approving that going out, thank you very much. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. Unless I'm going mad, have we missed the minutes of the last meeting?
On my agenda, Bureau. Would someone like to move that they are a correct record? Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Would someone like to second that? Thank you, Councillor Gibbons. All those in favour? Any against? And Councillor Hinton, you weren't there, so you are abstaining. And Councillor Smith, you are abstaining as well. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, Councillor Wilkinson. I'll try and keep up with my eyesight. So we've done the adoption and implementation of the anti-idling legislation. So now we move to the update of bylaws relating to acupuncture, tattooing, semi-permanent skin colouring, cosmetic piercing and electrolysis. And I understand that Sam Palmer, you're going to present that report for us. So hopefully everybody has read it and got to grips with what we are making recommendations on. Thank you very much.
Okay, so this is a follow-on report from one that we issued in 2018. We held a consultation back in 2018. There were 2 responses at that time, and with other competing priorities at the time, the scheme wasn't adopted. So this is a revisit to that previous consultation, seeking approval to do an 8-week consultation to seek views from the industry and community before bringing a proposal back to the chair of E&L to then go to full council for adoption. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Is everyone quite happy with that report then? Councillor Scroggie.
Yeah, sorry. Just you mentioned the 2 consultation responses from the last time this went out. Can you allude to whether they were positive responses or?
They were very short from memory. They were from businesses, but yeah, it was quite surprising. We'd written to 120 businesses seeking views, and to get only 2. I don't have the details to hand, but they certainly weren't objecting to the proposal. I think they were more sort of interested sort of comments about why we're doing it, which obviously is.
Yeah, probably not related to this report, but just for my education. And I noticed a lot of these sort of ventures that are run from home. How do you regulate those? How?
So we have ways and means. It's, there's 2 license fees or registration fees. This is a registration process. So there's the individual person carrying out the activity, but also the premises that they do them at. So, we'll gather intelligence from the community, from advertising, complaints that come in, rival businesses sometimes will report one another. There's a variety of ways that councillors, members, and where we get those reports, we'll sort of target them and we'll respond to them accordingly. As with the previous report, we'll do some publicity around this. We'll have a website. Like I said, we've already got businesses. We've got a list of businesses that are carrying out some of these activities. Part of their insurance process, if they need to get insurance, they'll ask, are you registered with your local authority? Do you have a licence if it's a licensable activity? So, it's not uncommon for us to find out, where that's happening in the borough.
Just come back. So is it legitimate that some businesses are run from home?
Yeah,
Okay,
I think
thank
so.
you.
Depending
Cheers.
on the nature of it, some of the piercing. Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Brooks and then Councillor Ellis.
I just wanted to welcome this because I've noticed just when you're out and about, there's more and more companies offering these types of treatments springing up all the time. So it seems that it's a very sensible thing for us to be doing. So thank you for the work you've done on it.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. I'm very much in favour of this. I do note that we've been considering implementing this for quite some time. And I can see that there's a process that we're going to be going through, including another consultation. Is it the full intention of the council, if this is passed by this committee, that there won't be any more delay, and provided everything is in order, of course, that we will go ahead and implement this bylaw?
Yes, that is the intention. We've got an additional member of staff that's been brought into my team to focus on health and safety type matters, and this licensing regime forms part of that work. They've also come from authority where they've done some of this activity as well, so they've got experience. So we do now have the resources in place to enforce and regulate these activities.
Councillor Gibbons.
Just one quick question. I look at these treatments and they're forever expanding. Will this policy cover that? As much as you can?
It's the activities are listed within the legislation, so it's quite prescribed. I was saying to a colleague earlier, there are increasing activities, Botox and other activities, beauty treatments that are now emerging. I know the Chartered Institute of Environmental Health are putting pressure on government to put in more regulation and to support communities and ensure that safe practices are carried out. So, we're limited to what's covered by the legislation at the moment, but it's not to say that there won't be future requirements further down the line. It would be helpful if some of this was duty, really, and we were required to do it rather than having to go through this adoption process, because they will be carried out across the country, really, not just in Gedling.
Is that everybody? Okay. The recommendations are on page 15, that we approve the draft bylaws as in Appendix A, and we authorise the Head of Environmental Services in consultation with me to assess responses from the consultation to determine whether the bylaws need to be referred back. I almost doubt that will be required before adoption, and we can have any minor amendments dealt with before it's referred to full council for implementation. Would someone like to move that? Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Thank you, the two people. Are you happy? All those in favour? Thank you very much. I would now like to move that we exclude the press and public under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act to be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the following report on the grounds that the report involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 7 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. So I move that. Would someone second that? Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. All those in favour of removing the press and public? Thank you very much.